Congresswoman from Alaska, Mary Peltola, joins me now. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Good evening.
I want to start with today's news and the fact that President Biden is calling on Congress to override the unions to ratify the rail worker agreement. It's expected to be taken up on the House floor. You, of course, ran on a pro-worker, pro-union message. Are you planning to support this? How are you planning to vote?
I'm going to be in a lot of communication with union leaders, especially union leaders in Alaska. This, of course, is a very grave concern throughout the nation, including Alaska, with freight being so important to all Americans. But I am very concerned about the fact that the negotiation concluded without really getting where we needed to be in terms of sick leave. I think not having sick leave and not being able to go to a doctor or get care is an untenable situation, especially when we have the flu coming up. We've got an RSV outbreak, and we still have effects of COVID as well. So I just don't think it's right or fair to expect workers to go to work sick as a dog without being able to have a few days to recover.
Congresswoman, it sounds like you are a no vote at this point.
That would be the case at this point, yes.
Okay, and what would get you to yes, and how do you respond to the president and various companies saying, look, this could cause catastrophic damage to the nation's economy?
Well, I think it could also cause a catastrophic damage to the nation's economy if we're expecting a whole sector of employees to go to work sick. And repeatedly, I think making sure that freight workers have their immunity built up and can be a healthy workforce, I think that that's critical to the economy as well.
Okay, so that paid sick days has to be addressed before you are willing to get on board with this legislation.
Yes, and it's not just paid sick days, it's the ability to have a sick day without the threat of being fired.
Okay, Congressman, obviously there is a lot on the agenda in this lame duck session. What do you think Democrats should be focused on?
I think we should really be focused on Americans, and one of the big things that I'm going to be pushing is for the Willow Project in Alaska. That is a project on the North Slope, and because of directional drilling being available now up to 7 miles, we have an opportunity to provide a lot more petroleum to America, and we certainly see the need for this with foreign wars going on and the exorbitant cost of petroleum right now. I think that the cost of diesel is a real driver in the inflation that we're seeing, and getting more access to American petroleum, I think, is really a critical thing.
President Biden says that one of the items on his agenda is to bring an assault weapons ban potentially up for a vote in the Senate. It's already passed the House before your special election. There have been 2 high-profile mass shootings in the past 2 weeks. You, of course, have expressed some opposition to restrictive gun legislation. I wonder what you think of this. Do you support President Biden's calls for an assault weapons ban?
I think that we can't just focus on assault weapons. I think that clearly we need to be focused on mental health issues. Mental health really is an epidemic in our country. Everyone from children to elderly people, veterans. We are seeing across our nation extreme isolation, and every one of these terrible events that are happening with mass shootings, they all boil down to the perpetrator feeling a sense of extreme isolation and mental health. We've just got to come together as Americans and be, focused on making sure that everybody is feeling a part of society. I mean, one of the things about the pandemic and everyone being isolated, it showed us we are pack animals. Human beings need other human beings. We need to feel part of a community. So I think that we can't just focus on an assault weapons ban. The other piece to this is I think that folks don't realize that you can buy parts and pieces off of the internet.
Let me press you on that, because you're saying you can't just focus on an assault weapons ban. You have the president, you have a number of your fellow Democrats saying, yes, we do want to focus more on mental health, in addition to dealing with the issue of guns, particularly in the wake of 617 mass shootings in the U.S. and 37 different states in the first days of 2022. Do you want to see something done on this issue of guns? Should the Senate vote on an assault weapons ban?
I am a very staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. This is something that Alaskans are very clear about. And I know that they are different conversations between hunting and Second Amendment and assault rifles. But when we're talking about broad-scale bans, I'm not really sure that we can practically even implement them at this time, because there are so many assault weapons out on the street. And this isn't even just a conversation with manufacturers, because you know, I have friends who have put together assault weapons from parts and pieces they can order off the internet. You can just build them at home at this point.
Congresswoman, let me ask you about President Biden more broadly and the Democratic leadership. He says he's going to make a final decision about whether to run for re-election in the new year. Is he the best person to represent the Democratic Party in 2024?
That is yet to be determined. You know, I am a very big supporter of our president. I think that he is a very good leader. I think he has such a long track record of being a good, productive, inclusive leader who clearly he's a great leader. We just saw the Inflation Reduction Act pass. We saw the infrastructure bill pass, some very critical things that are really going to help Americans down the road. We're going to see the effects of these broad-based bills in the next year. But I would also like to see who else is in the field.
Okay, Congresswoman Mary Peltola, we are out of time, so we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.